Hey, it's good to be back here with you guys. You might see some people, there's some books up here up front if you want to take one, and you can more than welcome to listen and look if you desire. I had a youth book from 2004 to 2011 that when I was a youth pastor, they made me when I left, and then there's St. Kitts from 2011 to 2019 up there that you can kind of view. And the reason I was doing that, as Kim was kind of sharing the theme of kind of what was on her heart to share, or have the pastors and leadership and teachers share, just the testimonies and verses that have impacted you through life, essentially, right? And I don't know, I just labeled it Stories of Glory. I don't know if she said that or if that came in my head. I don't know, I just wrote it down. I can't remember, to be honest. But stories of glory, of just like, man, thinking back in your life and just remembering different stages and the things that God did in times of prayer. And it could be times of suffering, times of, blessing, whatever it would be, but just the verses that you held on to, right? And what God did and encouraged you. And as I was going through them and looking at the books again and kind of writing it down, I only got I was going to try to go through, maybe get to where I am now, but I didn't even come close. I don't think I have time to share all of them to get to 2024, right? So maybe we could do a part 2 later or something, Kim. I don't know. It was just really sweet for me, to be honest. It was just sweet for me, and it was a reminder to myself. And then I would talk with Wendy about them, and was talking with the kids about something. Hey, do you remember? And just the goodness of the Lord, and how honestly, in our own human nature and our own fickleness, it really is easy not to forget the goodness of the Lord, but just you kind of naturally get away from an event, and the impact, loses a little bit on it, right? I mean, you think of 9/11, and we could probably all remember where we were at on 9/11 and the day and all those things, and those months and year and plus after, and the event hasn't lost its impact on you or me, I don't believe, but as you get farther removed, it just seems less real, or less involved in your life, and you got to purposely be intentional to remember it, right? Like, oh man, yeah, and put those stories and thoughts back in your head so that it impacts your heart again in the way. And I think that's natural, right? God has, I think, created us that way because it makes us dependent upon Him, right? And we can't live in the past. And on old glory days, the old comments of like, well, when I was in high school, and you remember how awesome you were, right? And all that stuff. And then now, as we get older, the awesomeness fades less and less. And when you tell those stories, people look at you like, yeah, right, that guy couldn't get up and down the basketball court. What are you talking about? So anyways, that's just kind of where it's at. So feel free to look at them, whatever you would want, that's fine. If not, you don't have to. All right, well, the main verse that I'm going to start off with, it's Isaiah 55, 8 and 9. This is my life verse. This is a verse that you'll probably be familiar with, maybe not, but it's, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor my ways are your ways, but as the heavens are higher than the earth, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts, and my ways are higher than your ways. And I'll give you the backstory on that. I remember coming to Bible college, and it was Wes at the time, was like, hey, what's your life verse? And I was literally 18 years old, fresh out of high school, just really gave my life, started following the Lord. I'll use it in that way. My senior year, some events happened, and the Lord got a hold of my life, and it was really an awesome thing. And I came to Bible college just kind of wet behind the ears. I just knew I wanted to follow Jesus and get stronger with Him before whatever else I was going to go and do. In my mind, I was going to go to a real school, right, after Bible college and become a teacher or do whatever it is that I desired at the time. And so I just remember him asking me that. I was like, life verse? I was like, what's that, Wes? He's like, oh, well, it's just a verse that the Lord has given you that you just hang on to, like for all of your life. It's just something you always go back to. And I was like, I mean, that sounds like a good thing. I'll pray for that, like, Lord, give me a life verse. And I just remember it wasn't too long after that. I couldn't give you the time frame if it was a few weeks or a few months after that. And I was sitting on a Wednesday night service. And if you go down on a Sunday, on the Sunday services for the third service, right? You always see the youth all lined up on the wall, you know what I mean? And they always sit, and that's been like a tradition for so long. I don't even know why, it just has been, even when I was a youth pastor. But on Wednesday nights, when I was in Bible college, the seats were always so full and everything. The Bible college always sat on the back of the wall, right? There was several of us. And I just remember sitting on the back of the wall and Bill going through this verse. And I don't remember if he just quoted it. I don't remember if he was going through the book of Isaiah. I do not remember. It would have been in 2001. And this verse, like as I was praying, like that, like the Lord was like, this is it. Like this verse, that my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not your ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, his thoughts are higher and his ways are higher. And that just has spoken to me almost in every circumstance when I don't understand what the Lord is doing, when I don't know why he allows something or causes something, or even when something good is going on, and to remember to give him thanks. Like his ways are higher. Like I can't ever understand them in totality. Now, he may choose to review pieces of why he's doing something, or he may not. But it gives me comfort to know, like, yeah, his ways better be higher than my ways and higher than my thoughts, because he's God, right? And if they're not, there's a problem. And so there's just an encouragement to me, and I think to every human being, that it's okay to not know, right? That it's okay, that it comes back down to, the Lord saying, Brandon, do you really trust me? In whatever situation. Because we can say it, and you all know it's another thing, when you're walking through the fire, than to say it. And so this verse, just when I started getting worried or frazzled about something or angry or just whatever, I've always just come back to this verse, right? Like, hey, his ways and his thoughts are higher than mine. Like when I want to try to take ownership of something and like, look at what I have done, look at who I have saved, or look at whatever, it's like, no. Like this is his ways and his thoughts, right, that have done these things through us. And so it's just a verse I feel like that encompasses almost everything in my life, and can always come back to it. And so I wanted to start off with that. So that's the life verse that I always come back to. So this next little bit, I'm going to pull back the curtain, so to speak, a little bit, being in ministry. I don't know all of your lives and where you have been in your faith throughout your life, or if you ever had the opportunity to serve at a church and ministry or whatever. But for the last, came to Bible college in 2001 and then was on staff in 2004. So, we could just call it 20 years, right? I've been a part of this ministry, whether that's in St. Kitts, for those years or actually here. And seen a lot in those 20 some odd years. A lot of you guys have been, who's been a part of the church for like 20 years? How long have you guys been? I know you came and went, but okay, it's in when you, okay. What about you? You guys? The 90s, in the 90s? 91, okay, yeah, sure. So, hey, you guys can relate and seen a lot of people come and go. Right? Like it could be even leadership, right? Even pastors come and go. Situations happen that were just like, God, what? You're faithful. I don't know what's going on, right? And so I'm just going to kind of pull back the curtain, I guess, a little bit, and show you what I've learned in maybe some messes that have gone on and been on. So as I kind of shared a little bit, but just really fast, I grew up in Crawfordsville, grew up in a Christian home. My parents loved the Lord. Was saved when I was 5 years old, went to a Baptist church. I found that Baptist church, that one specifically, not all of them, was just very legalistic. We weren't allowed to see movies, yada, yada, all the things, can't dance, you just can't have fun. You just gotta be a party pooper, apparently. And just, that was kind of my upbringing, but they taught the word, that was for sure. They taught the word. I was involved in a WANA program there. And so a good foundation, so to speak. But this weird taste of like legalism in my mouth that I didn't really know what it was at the time, right? But as the story progressed, I did. So grew up in that church, eventually moved churches through a series of events. There was a couple at this church that won the lottery. Right? Won the Hoosier lottery, $11.2 million, but they had to split it like 4 ways or something, so I only got 2 million. Bummer, Kathy and Terry. And I remember as a kid, I would have been third or fourth grade. So what is that, 9, 10 years old, something like that. And I just remember where they had Sunday eating service as well. And they brought Kathy and Terry up on the stage, and they, had to ask for forgiveness and apologize for gambling. Then, in the same sentence, donated X amount of dollars to pave the parking lot, of the church. And I just remember my parent, and maybe I'm remembering wrong, and I'm remembering my parents being upset, and then that was like reflected, absorbed by me or something. But I just remember, for whatever reason, understanding like that was wrong, right? Of just like, you made them apologize, but then you're going to take the money from it. Like what? I don't grasp that. So that was a move to another church. We moved to the church, and this other church was a Baptist church, but it wasn't like this one. The pastor there was really taught the word in a different way, and just also taught the youth. It was a smaller church, and really enjoyed it. And so this youth pastor was really instrumental into my life. And I just remember as I grew up through there, I was always involved with youth group, but it was my kind of junior year going into my senior year. Like he was just preaching on hypocrisy, and I just, as he was sharing, and maybe he's taught on this before in all those years, I don't really know, Pastor Todd, but I just, at the end of it, I was like, man, that's me. I was just like, I am the one saying one thing and doing the other. I'm going to youth group, being a leader at youth group, but behind the scenes, I'm going to parties, doing all this other stuff, and that I was involved in. I was just like, but I really love the Lord. I really love the Lord, absolutely. It was just, I think, a moment of what I would call, didn't know it again at the time, was I really believe at that moment when I rededicated my life to the Lord, I was just baptized in the Spirit. Like the Word, as I started reading it at that point in time, 17 years old, just was different. My life just changed and was upside down. Like I was all in for Jesus. I believe I was saved before that for sure. But it was just an experience that the Lord did. And so that led me to a position of eventually came here for a wedding, which was John David and Kirsten's wedding, because John David is my half-brother. If you didn't know that, you know now. And so we came. I met Billy Brandel at the time, who was the Bible college director, and he's just a gifted evangelist. So any young person he saw, he was like, hey, come to Bible college. Who are you, And I was just like, whoa, Billy, like just time out. I don't know you. Like just kind of back up a little bit. And he, put the seed in my head about Bible college. And I was just like, okay. So I went through my senior year, kind of with that in the back of my mind. I visited that February of my senior year, and I thought, if I don't get any scholarships to run track and I'll do this Bible college thing, right? And so I had a good track season, went to state, and got a couple scholarships, but the Lord just wouldn't let it go. That this is where I was supposed to be. And so I fought it tooth and nail, like in my heart, you know what I mean? Like all my actions were, I'm doing this. I paid for things and, packed my stuff up. And I just remember driving up from Crawfordsville, and my parents were with me, and I had all my stuff and the car, and then was on that sidewalk out there by the cabins, and my parents were like, hey, well, see you later type thing. And I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing here, right? And I start meeting different people and students, and they're just a bunch of weirdos. And I'm like, why am I here? Like Thane McGuire, I don't know if you know Thane. Like, man, he is a weird dude. He's a lot better now. He has long hair down then, and these cut-off shorts with these chains on and stuff. And he was just weird. Anyways, we became friends, and it was just one of those things where you're just kind of like, what have you done? But yet I knew this is where I was supposed to be. You know what I mean? I knew this is where God had me. And so, through that in Bible college, it was a tearing down. I say it this way. I say the first year was a tearing down. The second year was a building up. The first year was this kind of that tearing down of myself. And then that second year was just the Lord building up on that foundation that He wanted to build up. And so first year, I was like, man, I quit I think 30,000 times, told people I'm not coming back after Christmas break. I'm not, but I never did. I just stuck it out and kept going. And at the end of the first year Bible college, we went to Ukraine for a mission trip. And I, again, would have been 19, I guess, at that time, had a birthday. But I'd never been on a mission trip ever in my life, never been out of the country, any of those things. And so it was all new, and we were kind of immature anyways. And we were the group that Mike Pratt was like, we are never having mission teams ever again because these guys were so horrible. Now, as I look back, I don't think we were that horrible. But again, I wasn't in a leadership position where Mike was, so I might speak differently if I could see what he saw. For me, I was just this immature 19-year-old who was excited, but Billy was moving to Ukraine at the time, and so we didn't really have a leader that was with us. He put one of the second-year students in charge, and so all us other students were like, man, why is this guy in charge? Like, he's a student, and we know that he's an idiot too. So we just didn't do what they told us to do, basically. However, I remember lots of things, and I don't have time to get into that, of just how God used us. I remember sharing my testimony at this basketball game. I remember a lot of sweet moments in Ukraine. And what I will share is the last one. The very last night, we were there, and I don't remember. We were in Kiev somewhere, and you could see the giant statue. I forget what that statue is called there. She's holding the shield and the sword thing or whatever, right there in Kiev. And we had this worship night, and Ed was helping lead worship, and there was Abe Medlong and another guy, Jake. They would switch off from playing guitar because we started worshiping when it was daytime, and it just went through the night, and it wasn't planned. It was just one of the, to this day, most heavy feeling the Spirit, without not trying to be weird or anything, that was just there in the room. And everyone, there was times where we were on the ground, crying and repenting and praying for each other. And there was other times where, I kid you not, and it sounds weird, but it wasn't weird at the time, all right? People were dancing and do-si-doing, to songs and stuff. It was just, as I try to describe it, unless you were there, it would just seem strange, to be honest. But it was really sweet, and the Lord started breaking through in people's hearts and lives, and they were switching people who was playing because their fingers were hurting, right? And for me, what happened was the Lord really spoke to me, and it's no, you are where you're supposed to be, but there's just been so much pride, right, in your heart and in your life. I need you just to fully submit, to me and my calling and what I have for you. And that's right then and there. I went and apologized to Billy and, to some students and individuals at the time. But it was the first kind of knock on my heart that I think I'm supposed to be in ministry, right? I'm called to serve the Lord in a full-time vocation like that. But it was still kind of, back here. And so... So this happens. So I'm praying about that. So second year Bible college comes around. I remember meeting Bill in the brick house, and he starts talking to me about ministry for the first time. Hey, what are you going to feel? Well, I feel like I'm going to go to Bible college, and then I'm going to go back to school, probably try to run track again somewhere, and then maybe be a teacher, PE teacher, something. What I wanted to do. He's like, well, have you ever thought of sports ministry? It's oh, no, I really haven't. But again, that was another seed that started kind of going and ruminating in my heart and in my head of being called to ministry. And I remember it was in my second year Bible college towards the end before I graduated, and I was praying about, should I intern, should I not? And I don't know if you guys ever do this, but ever since I was a kid, I remember doing stuff like this, even playing basketball outside where, you pretend you're Reggie Miller, right? And there's so much time left on the clock, and you shoot it, trying to beat the buzzer beater. And they're like, oh no, he misses it, but there's still another second and he rebounds and score, that type of thing. So I always had this imagination in my head where I do stuff like that. And so I'll do that in the car. I don't do it too much anymore right now, but if you ever see people that drive by and then you try to say what do they do for work? What are they? What's, you just get that one glance at them. And I was at the stoplight over on 82nd Street, going to where you can get onto 69. And this is true. Like, true story, as God is my witness. Like, I was really in a time of like, Lord, please just like speak to me. Like, and so I started playing this little game of just like, okay. And I was praying at the stoplight and my eyes were closed. I was like, all right, the next person that drives by in a car when I open my eyes this is who I'm going to be like when I am older, you know? Like, and so this is a true story. I opened my eyes and the next car that turns and crosses my path is Bill Goodrich. I'm dead serious. Dead serious. And it sounds weird, but it's not. I didn't base my whole life on that one instance, right? There was a lot of other things that led to it, as you kind of hopefully are seeing. But it was just another little thing of where, like, hey, his thoughts are higher than my thoughts and his ways are higher than my ways. Like, and it was just another encouragement of like, yes, I'm on the right path. Like, Brandon, you are right where you're supposed to be. You're in Bible college. I'm calling you to ministry. And it was just another thing, a little thing that the Lord used to encourage me. And so another story with that is when I was in, this would have been kind of rewinding a little bit before that, when I was still trying to wrestle with like being in track or going somewhere to, should I be in Bible college or should I go run somewhere? Like quitting again, kind of that first year, going into the second year. I worked at a place called Circuit City during Bible college, if you guys remember Circuit City. And it was kind of a competitor to Best Buy before they went under. And I did customer service, and I was helping this gentleman. His name was Tom Andrews, and he had a problem with his computer. And it's a long story short, but I was on the phone with the warranty company because the warranty is not through us. We sell the warranty, but the warranty is through XYZ, through this other company. So I'm on the phone with them because he's having troubles because the computer's hard drive is so wonked out. Like, it takes like 7 hours for the computer to boot up. Like, true story. Like it was just, the hard drive was trash, but they wanted to run all of their tests. Hey, you need to do this and this and this before they would then like approve it to like, you know, I was like, so I'm on the phone. That doesn't even matter. But I'm on the phone with them, arguing with them, and like saying, listen, like I'm here with it. It's not booting up. And so it was like this 2-3 day process because I would plug it in, try to boot it up, and I would check on it the next day for him, and then he would come in, trying it, and then call the company. And so at the end of all of this, it was like, 3 or so days. Tom comes in and he says, hey, are you a Christian? I said, well, yeah, actually I am, I go to Bible college and so forth. He's like, I thought so, just because the way you handle yourself and how you talk to the people on the phone with the warranty and all this stuff. And he's like, hey, I actually teach and do some stuff up at Taylor University. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And so he started asking me about my story. And so I just told him a little bit, where I'm at. I'm just struggling. Am I called to ministry? Here I am at Bible college, but I have this desire and gift to run in particular, and I have these scholarships. He's like, oh, I know the Taylor track and football coach. He said, why can't you do both? He's like, why can't you go and get a Christian education and do your sports? And I was like, I haven't really thought of that. It's a good idea. Wish you would have told me that, a year and a half ago. But it's just not what the Lord had. And so he's like, I'll tell you what, I'm going to call, I don't even remember the guy's name. I'm going to call the football coach and the track coach and just let them know I met you and that you're an awesome young man, and let's just see what God does with it. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine. I didn't really think too much of it. So he leaves. I was closing that night, so it was like 10-something, and I got back over to the cafeteria over there on the South Campus and, was getting my food and all this stuff. And it was like 10:30, almost 11 o'clock at night, and my phone rings. And I kid you not, it was the Taylor football coach and track coach. It was like, hey, I heard you met my buddy Tom. He's a good guy, and he spoke so highly of you. If he speaks highly of you, then I got to pay attention. And so I'd love to meet you and blah, 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 all this stuff. And I was like, oh, man, God, this is crazy. And right then and there, again, the Lord, his ways are higher than my ways. His thoughts are higher than my thoughts. And I thought, man, maybe this is you, Lord, and this is the answer prayer. And he just spoke to me. And it wasn't that I was supposed to lead. This is what it was. You ready? He said, and it wasn't in like some audible voice or anything, but it was just in the stillness of my heart. He just said, Brandon, if I wanted you anywhere else, I just wanted you to know like I could change your life with one phone call. but you're right where you're supposed to be. And it was just like this peace that I finally was able just to let go of that part of my life and just be like, Lord, you can't, like with one phone call, this guy called and I could be off at Taylor doing something else, right? Like if God wanted any of you guys anywhere else, like he could change that with one event, one phone call, one thing, and you won the lottery, or you got a new car, or you're supposed to be here, or this, you're supposed to move to Florida. Like, I don't know, whatever it is, like he can do that. And so there's no reason to kind of fret. Like, it's good to seek him, when we're going through these things and trying to figure out calling and purpose and direction. But just remember that like he could just change it with one thing. There's no reason for us to get in the flesh and try to, make something happen because he can just change it but in a moment. And so it was a good lesson for me of his ways are higher than my ways. And as maybe I thought it was leading to this way, but actually the Lord was just wanting to solidify, no, you're right where you're supposed to be. And I just wanted to show you that I could change it anytime I wanted, but I don't want to. And this is where you're supposed to be. And so it was a really good moment in my life that changed my trajectory for that second year of Bible college, and then to stay an intern and to do the youth pastor and all those things. So this now kind of pushes through the interning. So that next year I started interning after I graduated Bible college. Then I came on staff to do the junior high after that year. And then I got to see, two key people, mentors in my life, fail miserably in ministry, and as a believer. And all of this was during the time Wendy and I had just met and / got married, and so forth, so on, all at the same time. And so she was 19, I was 22 years old. And so that was a big to-do because when we got married, we started kind of dating that April when she was 18. So I was doing the junior high at that time, and she was in the high school youth group. And so it kind of came this thing with some individuals of like, oh, she is in the youth group and you're, the youth pastor, and which wasn't the case. I was in the junior high type thing, and she was 18 and I was 21 at the time. And so we tried to walk very circumspectly and cautiously and talk with Bill, and you just had a lot of wisdom, as we handled that and tried to walk through it. And so that was difficult, that piece of it. And then there was a piece of her mom who was not on board with it at all. Her mom had been through a lot, was single. I can't remember if she was living with a guy. I think she was living with a guy for a while, then they broke up. So they were broken up at the time. So she was in an apartment, and I just remember going over there, and she was like, basically said, hey, like, you can't live on faith. You can't just go and pray that there's going to be money in the mailbox every day. Like, you need to go and do something, right? I was like, well, I have a job. I'm this junior high youth pastor. And she's like, that's not a real job. Okay, sorry, and like, I was so, discouraged. And she basically said, you'll never be good enough for my daughter type thing. And so trying to figure out how to honor her mom, and everyone had counsel. Bill had counsel. My dad had counsel, all of these things. And at that time, there was a verse, and you guys may know it, that jumped out and really kind of leaned on, was Proverbs 11:14. And you guys probably know it, but it says, where there's no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counsel there's safety. And I learned a valuable lesson that it says in the multitude of counsel there's safety. It doesn't say in the multitude of counsel there's direction. And there's a big difference, because it would really be easy just to say, hey, Bill, I trust you. Can you just kind of like tell me what to do in every decision of my life so I don't have to make it, like, he's a godly man. He'll pray about it for me and like, hey, do this, right? Like, so in the multitude of counsel, there's safety, right? It's good that I went to Bill, to my dad, to these other individuals, and believe it or not, all these godly men were giving me different advice and different angles. And you're just like, well, that's not good, because just tell me what to do, right? I don't need you to confuse me more. But what does it do? It causes you as the individual to go and seek who? The one that matters, God. right? And you go back to God and you search it out and you're like, Lord, what are you telling me to do? And so that was hard because you respect all these men and I'm just trying to, weed through all of that. And it was just a really sweet time of the Lord using that verse to show me that I need to, live for the Lord and listen to him. And my dad's counsel was like, listen, like, I don't see any sin in your life. I see the Lord working in your life. You and Wendy are talking to people. You're getting counsel. He says, so you're a man. So who am I to come against you if God is telling you to do this? Like, I don't see any other thing that would say, no, if you're telling me this is what God is telling you, I don't see these other things in your life that would give me pause. So follow the Lord, right? And what he's sharing to you. And then I have Bill on one side. He was like, hey, you really need to honor the father and mother. Even if they're not a believer, you still need to honor them. And I mean, what time is this done? I have too much to say. I'm sorry. Okay. And so it's just funny because Bill, I understand what Bill was trying to do, but he actually did the opposite. So what happened was he pulled me and he starts telling me this story about when he was in San Diego or something, and there was this guy and this gal, and they wanted to get married, but the mom and dad didn't want them to because he was a black guy, right? And she was Caucasian, and so it was obviously not right that they felt that way, and it was racist, but he was just like, she tried to walk with honor in that situation, and so they weren't getting married, and and so he says, and it was a good thing, and I was like, oh, okay, why? And he's like, because they were at a family function together, and they were in the pool, and he wound up drowning in the pool while all the family, everyone, whatever, something happened, and he drowned, and so it was a good thing that they didn't get married because he would have had all that kind of baggage as a husband and whatever else. And I'm just thinking the whole time, I was like, man, that's the opposite of what I would have done. Like, they should have got married before he died. At least they would have got to have sex and be together, thinking in my mind. I'm like, no, that's like, Bill, like, I understand what you're trying to do, but like, you're actually pushing me to the other side, right? That we should get married tomorrow in case one of us die, type thing. And so anyways, his big thing was honoring the parents because we see that in Scripture. And it's absolutely true, right? And how do you walk through that? And then my dad's big thing was like, hey, I don't see any sinful thing in your life. So if God's telling you, to do it, then you need to do it. And so Wendy and I just kept giving it back to the Lord. We're like, God, we won't do this. We won't get married. We'll continue to wait. And every time we would do it, he would give us a scripture. He would give us a song, a worship song. He would do something to say, no, you guys are walking in the right direction. So I didn't plan on sharing that whole story, but yeah, you get more than what you paid for, I guess. And so that moves into a reason why I feel like, as I look back, why the Lord allowed us to get married so early is because I don't know if I would have been able to go through the seasons that were getting ready to happen apart from having Wendy there with me and us going through it together, right? And so shortly after we got married, the youth pastor and Bible college director at the time, who was my mentor, who married Wendy and I, he was accused of being in a homosexual relationship with one of the Bible college students, all right? So his name was Moxie. And Moxie was always kind of weird, but to this day, one of the greatest Bible teachers that I've ever heard. Just amazing, right? For those of you who in this room maybe got to hear him, that's my opinion anyways. And so at first, since I'm so close to him, you're like, no, this is a lie. It's not true, which I think we probably should for any of us. We give each other the benefit of the doubt, right? You're like, there's no way, type thing. And so I wasn't in conversation with, I didn't get to be in all the board conversations, but I was in some of these staff conversations, right, that were happening. And so it was hard because my heart was already jaded in the sense of what had happened is Moxie, and I'll even say the other guy's name is Greg Pickle, but that story gets to end really well, and hopefully I'll get to share that. But they had, since I've been hanging out with them, kind of really twisted my mind about Bill and about the church and just about, at that season, how Bill operated, if I could say it that way, right? I don't want to say that. At the end of the day, it came down to, we really felt like we were right about certain things, about how things should be done at the church. And I was just kind of following Moxie and Bill, Pickle and thinking, yeah, this sounds right. This sounds good. Yeah, of course, right? And then I see these things over here. It seems more legalistic, seems hard-nosed, like whatever. This isn't, that's right. Bill needs to change, type thing. And so all this was happening. So I didn't want to believe it. As the more came out, and some of the Bible college kids that I was close to or whatever, I started talking to, I was like, man, like this is interesting, right? There's a lot of evidence pointing this direction. And so I'll shorten it up. Long story short, it was something that did happen. It was something that, he was involved in and struggled with. He wound up moving to Costa Rica and just totally living his homosexual lifestyle there and died there. By a seizure, apparently. However, and I'm not trying to say this to be a conspiracy theorist, because I don't really believe in a lot of conspiracies. However, if anyone was going to fake their death and get away with it, like Moxie, I really believe could have done it. And there was some weird stuff that just doesn't line up. Never found his passport or his driver's license when they were there bringing the body back. And the other thing was he had this blog, Soul Searcher, I can't remember. Anyways, but his, and I would kind of keep up with it because it was usually a bunch of just insane stuff of just like, how do you get that? And I would try to contact him and we would talk about it or whatever. But anyways, it was taken down, right? Like a week or so before, like it wasn't up, like you couldn't get to it anymore. And so it makes me think like, it's possibly he could have killed himself, or like that he closes his Facebook and all that stuff and, is living somewhere and nobody knows about it. But he's probably dead, nonetheless. So it was really hard on me because he was a huge mentor in my life. And I'm thinking like, dude, this guy just failed miserably. I remember calling Bill and saying, listen, like, the Lord has just said, man, I need to submit or I need to leave. And I just like kind of confessed all this stuff that he had no idea was being talked about like behind his back in closed doors, right? You know what I mean? Just had zero clue. And so like it was really powerful for me and Bill, because from that point on, our relationship changed for the rest of time, right? Of how I saw him and respected him, and even him for me, right? Like I don't know, I could be wrong about this, but I feel like Bill and I maybe butted head more than any other person on staff in the history of Horizon, but it was a good thing, right? Like I was always able to submit, and I learned to submit, and also learned not to be, what he appreciated, I think, was not to be a yes man. I just didn't say yes to everything because Bill said it, we should do it, right? Like I would push back, I think, what about that? And so it was good, right? I remember when he came to St. Kitts one time, and he came back, and everyone goes, Brandon, what did you do to Bill? I was like, what? It's like he's wearing jeans and like a hoodie like at church and on Wednesday nights, right? You know what I mean? I'm just like, I don't know, because I wear flip-flops, down there, to teach in and just, whatever. And it was like the staff dress code changed like right after that, and they started referring to him like his Grandpa Bill days, right? Like he, when you have your own kids, you're like hard, and then you have the grandkids, and you're just like, here's candy before you go to bed, right? Like, so things started changing. They started getting Saturdays off. They started getting Mondays off, which I was always trying to push when I was here. That's another thing. But so anyways, it was just really healthy for Bill and I, and I love that man. And that moves into the next one, right, was Pickle. And he was a worship leader here at the time. And there was an event that happened at school, and I'm not going to necessarily go through all that because that's like, it was a bunch of like, I don't know. But what came out of it was a heart issue that was in him. And then it obviously, it kind of came to pass of at least knowing the fruit of him, because then he left his wife, and, was with this other girl, and left his family. They just had their third kid. Like, it was just horrible, and that just threw me through a real giant loop of having these things back to back. Nonetheless, to say when I first came into ministry, I came in on the heels of what happened like with Toby, right? When Toby left the church and started a church. And it was a good thing that he was starting a church, so don't hear me wrong, but there were some things that happened that weren't good, and Bill and him were like this, and they've since apologized. Everything is good. Years and years ago, that got cleaned up. But I came into, this was my experience in those first like 3 years of ministry, which is like drama and people failing. And I'm just like, well, I just want to tell people about Jesus. Like, what is going on? Like, I guess my thought was like, I guess I'm next. Like, I'm probably going to fail at some point then, right? It was like, you know. And so I just remember, one, having Wendy there was huge for us to go through this together. And then the next piece of that puzzle was with Pickle. He was here still. So like, man, I pursued that dude, and you could ask him to this day, like everywhere. Like I would find out where he was working. I would knock on his house. I would, anything I could do to just, like, dude, talk to me, because he wouldn't return anyone's call. He would just, all the stuff. And so, man, I don't know how much time had passed, probably a year or so. He had an apartment, but he was working at Fry's over there in 96. I think it closed down, right? But and I finally went in, and I was going in there day in and day out to try to find a schedule. He wasn't there, and one day he was there. I was like, yes. And he saw me. He was working with a customer, and I promise he was trying to work with that customer as long as possible to hopefully I would leave, right? But I just kept waiting. I just waited and waited and waited. And finally he took a break, and we just had it out. We went outside, and we just had it out with each other. And he was fine until I made some kind of comment about his salvation. I was just like, man, I don't know, but all I know is like someone who's walking with Jesus and is saved wouldn't be doing this to their family, and blah, went into this whole thing, and he just lost his mind. And I think it really hit a button, right? Like to challenge him. And so that was it. That was kind of the last time I talked to him. And it's getting into the SK part, which probably not even gonna get into. But we moved to St. Kitts in that calling, and I'll have to try to jump back to that. But I just remember, I don't remember that second year. I can't remember exactly when it was. And I get a phone call. He goes, hello, is this Brandon? I'm like, yeah. He's like, hey, this is Greg. I'm like, oh, hey, Greg Pickle. He's like, dude, I just want you to know, like, man, I came back to the Lord, and I just appreciate you so much and what you did and how you pursued me when no one else did, and no one else would. He said I made it really hard for him too, as well, right? And it just, so from then on, our relationship started again, and it was a really long road. If you ever get to talk with him and see him, I know his kids were here at Bible college, and so he's been around a little bit, the last year or so or whatever. And it's an amazing story and testimony of just God's goodness, even though a man tried to be such an idiot, and he will be the first one to tell you. And so he's doing really well and walking with Jesus, and him and Nancy are doing well, and he's leading Bible studies again and worship, and just it's just amazing to see the restoration. But it is hard when he talks about the years the locust ate because of his decisions, right? But again, Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts, and his way is higher than our ways. So I didn't mention this, but in that transition, when I became the senior high youth pastor, once Moxie left, there was a lot of like, church leaving and not split, but just people leaving, and the youth group just like going from like massive amount of people to like, nothing. It was pretty much just my junior high kids that I had the year or two before. Like, so it was a bunch of freshmen, basically, and sophomores in the youth group at that point in time. And so, is it 10? What time is it? Sorry, do we have to be done? Okay, so 7 minutes. So Joshua 1:5, that was the big thing. It was that the Lord gave me coming into this. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. And so that was the first book that we went through, was Joshua, through that stage. And I just like, man, I'm never going to be able to measure up to Moxie and blah, 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 and all this stuff that was, fears of my own heart and my own head. But it was just like, man, as I was with Moses, so as I was with, in my mind, Moxie, right? As I was with this youth pastor and blessed it, right? And the work of his hands through me, like, I'm going to be with you, through it. And which for me as a young man, it was just a super encouraging thing. And I held on to that verse of that, like, hey, we can do this. And I'm 22 years old or whatever it was, probably at the time 22, maybe going on 23. young and wet behind the ears, like the Lord was going to be with me, and it was an encouragement to me. And the Lord sent a lot of great leaders, Scott Ellman and Jeff Marr, and just and so many that came through just to kind of partner alongside and help. And it was just a huge blessing, those years of ministry and whatnot. So, oh man, I don't have time for all this, but I'm just going to get with the start of it then. Man, Lord, give me wisdom here. The Lord started speaking to me. I'm just requiring more of you. And so naturally, what I think any person does, like I just started doing that in the flesh. Like I started searching for what that meant. Like, am I supposed to leave the church and go here? Am I planning a church? Am I doing, whatever it is? And then he's like, oh, maybe it's the school. So the school was going on. Another situation happened. I won't even get into that with the principal. And he had to be let go and all this stuff. And so I kind of like, hey, Brandon, will you fill in, not necessarily as a principal, just kind of as a dean to see us through these next, it was only like 2 or 3 months left of school, right? Just to, till we find a principal and figure out what's going on next. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I thought maybe this was it. I'm supposed to get more involved with the school. And I hated it. Those 3 months were like some of the worst times of my life. Right? I don't know. I just hated it. Can't really tell you why. It had a lot to do, I think, with youth group and relationships with youth group and church are free and not as structured. You know what I mean? I don't give the youth group kids detention. You know what I mean? And suspend them, I mean, I guess you could, like if they were real bad, but it was just different where it was so relational. It was all relational, I feel like, in youth. And then you come to school and there was a lot more administrative, and that relational piece was kind of maybe cut in half a little bit, And so all the youth were like, man, we like the old Brandon better. I was like, it's the same Brandon. You're the one there to get in trouble at school, right? Like, I didn't do anything. Like, the problem is you, like, not me, right? So anyways, I didn't like it, but it was requiring more of you. Went to St. Kitts that year, 2009, for a mission trip again, because we had been going there. The Crooks were from there, if you remember Val and Julie, and that's how we got going to St. Kitts in the first place in 2007. And so when I went in 2009, and I was praying about this, Lord, you're requiring more of me. What does it mean? What does it mean? And I kid you not, it was just like, again, one of those moments where you just know it's the Lord. And I get off the plane and we go to this boat because we're going to Nevis, which is a little sister island. We're spending most of our time over there this time. And the guy, it was Val's dad, Denzel. The first thing he says to me, like for no apparent reason, I have no idea why, right to this day, he just looks at me and gives me a big hug. He says, welcome home, brother. And I'm like, home? Like, this is my 3rd time here. Like, why is this my home, type thing. And that was the first start of where the seed was planted in my head, of where the Lord, his thoughts are not my thoughts, his ways are higher than mine. Of just like, I couldn't get away from it. Of like, could I be called to be a missionary here in St. Kitts? Like, no, like, God wouldn't call someone out to move to the Caribbean, right? That's for rich people trying to hide money and stuff, right? Like, no, it can't be, So I kind of pushed it away, but man, all that trip, it was just so evident that this was what the Lord was doing. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like Wendy wasn't with me. We just had Audrey. And so she stayed back and I was like, Wendy is going to be so mad. She is not going to like this one bit, right? So I go back and I tell Wendy, and this is the verse. I'm sitting in my driveway, and I was on the radio station. I don't remember what it was, but I just remember John Corson was on. He's a pastor up in Oregon, and he was just talking about, where did I put it down here? I know I did. Sorry, Genesis. Maybe I didn't put it down here. Sorry. But there's, in Genesis, where if you guys will know it, but anyways, it's like 18 or something. But Sarah, when God kind of tells Sarah that she's going to, have all these sons and, and she's like, I'm old. And what does she do? She laughs. Do you remember? And so he was sharing that on the radio. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this is Wendy. Wendy is just going to laugh and just be like, ha, 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 And so the Lord, as I just started listening to his sermon, like in the driveway before I go in, it was like the Lord put on my heart, he's like, Brandon, like, she's going to laugh, and you're going to have to stay away and let me do the work. right? Like you don't have to stay away and let me, because you maybe heard it said it's not one hauled and one called, right? Like you can't, and I'm a Mr. Fixer person. I just feel like you get me in the room long enough with someone, like I can fix them, right? I can get them to accept Christ, right? I'll beat them into it if I have to. But like, so that's kind of like my bent. And so I can argue my way into things and so forth, so on. And so the Lord was just speaking to me right then and there, like, nope, like shut your mouth. You do not argue your way in. You don't try to prove a point. You don't try to do any of that. And it's exactly what happened. I told her, and her exact words were, "I'll see you when you get back." Those were her exact words. I was like, all right, Lord, you're going to have to do a work. And so through a series of things, the Lord gave her some verses, and one was in Genesis as well, actually, and it was Genesis 28:15. He says, "Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. What's more, I am with you and I will protect you wherever you go, and one day I will bring you back to this land." And so that was, when she read that verse, it was probably about 6 months later, this whole process. Like St. Kitts became a cuss word in my house. True story. Wasn't allowed to say the word. She gave me permission to talk about it. I don't want to say permission, like she was beating me or something, but like in honoring her, she gave me permission to talk to 2 people about it, and it was Bill and Jordan, right? Those were the only 2. I was like, I told her, I was like, honey, I need some kind of outlet because this is what God is doing in my heart. And even if it's not him and we're not supposed to go, like I still need to talk to somebody about it. And he's like, you can talk with Bill and Jordan. Like, that's it. Because she did not want to go, right? But when she read this verse, it was exactly what she needed, and it was kind of this death to her vision of what she had thought for our kids. She thought, we'll go here, we'll be the youth pastor, they'll go to the private Christian school, and we'll just live the husband and life, and it'll just be great. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that vision, but when you have to have that die because the Lord's calling you to do something else, again, Isaiah 55:8-9, it's difficult. Right? And so by God's grace, he allowed me to stay away, and I did. And the Lord shared that verse, and what helped her was like she really felt she had a promise that we're coming back. At some point, she was going to bring us back, that it wasn't a forever thing. And that's just what she needed. You know, for me, I was just like, whatever, we're in it until I'm dead or just whatever, you know. But for her, she needed that promise of like the Lord was like, hey, I'll bring you back at some point. This isn't a forever thing. And some missionaries, they think the other way, that you need to go and think it's a forever thing. And I believe that's true. But for her, that's what she needed to hear. I came home from a track meet one night is what it was. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. And she was in bed and I could hear her crying. And I was like, oh man, like something's getting ready to go down. You know, like, Lord, give me peace. So I went in, took a shower really quick, and I'm in the shower just praying like, Lord, give me patience, give me wisdom. Like, I don't know, are we going to fight again about St. Kitts? Like, I just knew something was going on. And she shared this verse, and she just shared, I know it's what we're supposed to do, but I'm just scared. And, you know, all this stuff, and it was great. But then at that point, she was all in, you know, and everything changed. And a verse that the Lord had given me to share with her as well was Matthew 19:29. And it said, and everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or fathers or mother or children or lands for my name's sake will receive 100-fold and will inherit eternal life. And it wasn't necessarily like, oh, we're doing this to get something, but it was just like, hey, the Lord is with us. Like he sees us and he knows and he honors the heart of one that is just willing to give up everything, even your house and your dreams and your family of you know, taking your family somewhere else and all those things. And so that's just what she needed. And so that started the preparation for us to move to St. Kitts and start that journey. And that's what a lot of those books were about. And if you go, even right now, if you want to, you can read the 8.5-year journey of our life of St. Kitts from day to day almost. It's just Mission St. Kitts at blogspot.com. I think it's still on there. So if you just search mission and then STKITTS, I'm sure it comes up. One of the first thing on Google, Mission St. Kitts at blogspot.com or something like that. And it has our whole journey from so many answered prayers, so many scriptures you'll find in there. Just like, man, it was a trip, man. Just moving and trying to sell the house in 2011 was not a good time to sell a house. Just all this stuff was against us. One time, there was a point where we we didn't have enough money. We had like $10,000 saved. Like, this is what we have. This is our support. And like, you're seeing it through the year, like slowly go down. And like, I did the math and like, okay, this is the month that if we get no other support, like this is the month it ends. You know what I mean? Like, this is where it meets zero. And the Lord just spoke to me and he was like, and not in a prideful way, but I just felt like I was supposed to give it to the Lord in such a way of where I said, Lord, like, this is your problem. Like, you've called us here. And, worst case scenario, like we were here for these 2 years or whatever it was, 2.5 years. And we've done what you've called us to do, and you move us back, and my wife will be happy, and we'll be back in America again. And the best case scenario, you're going to provide in this amazing way, and he did. We came back that summer for furlough, and we had about 3 months till zero, and we picked up a lot of supporters and churches and individuals, and I just think it took a while. Like there really was a stigmatism on being a missionary in the Caribbean of like how many jokes we would get. And you just kind of smile on the outside, but on the inside you just want to punch them in the face. Like, well, why don't you go? Why don't you move? I'll come back here and live a nice life, And well, anyways, but it was like kind of a stigmatism. And so I think it took a while for people to get on board. Like, hey, this young couple, they're actually really going out to do missions, and they're not just drinking margaritas on the beach or something, and like, hey, this is prayer time or something, like that there was actually a need there. And so I think once people saw the ministry, they saw what was happening, it was like a part to, they're like, okay, yeah, now I'm on board, right? I don't know. And obviously God did it for reasons to test our faith and challenge us, and to be dependent upon him for finances and all those things. So, man, that's just so that's from, I don't know, I was born in 1983 to, this puts us at like 2011, something like that. But in the journey that God has had us on, I wouldn't change it even now. I'd love to come back and maybe share a part 2 of leaving St. Kitts and being kind of lost, trying to figure out what I'm doing here, and then now being the head of school, which I know it's where the Lord's called me. But to get to this point, it was just a lot of, Lord, what are you doing? And why am I here? And, not feeling fulfilled or just frustrated, or I thought it was this and then it wasn't. And now it's, just like all these things. Like, so I don't know if that relates to anything in your life, but just trust and know that God's thoughts are higher than your thoughts, and his ways are higher, no matter what you're going through. So let me close in prayer. Lord, I love you. I thank you. I thank you for your goodness. And man, I pray that you get the glory for everything that I just said. Lord, I'm nothing apart from you. And I thank you for even the gifts that you have given, Lord, like they're yours. You gave them, and I can take 0 credit. And so I just thank you for the faith to step out in faith. I thank you for just the blessings that you have poured out, Lord, the times of where things were difficult and tears were shed. And we cry out to you, and times where it's like shouts of praise, and I don't know, you almost feel like nothing could go wrong, and like you're coming back tomorrow and we're taking over the world or something. I don't know, but I just thank you so much, and I know you've done that in different ways in the individuals' lives right in front of me as well. And so may we always have stones of remembrance, these verses, these things, these stories of glory that we hold on to for when the next one comes around that's difficult. We'll still be able to say, hey, his thoughts are higher, his ways are higher. He saw me through the other 12,000. He's going to see me through this one. In worst case scenario, I die and I'm in heaven with him forever and ever, Lord. So we thank you. Help us to go from here and be a light to this world. In Jesus' name, amen.